Hello. Today we are going to recap Ironman 70.3 Virginia Blue Ridge. We are back home after the race, feeling pretty good. How are you feeling after the race, after your relay?
I feel tired. It was hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty. I'm feeling actually pretty good. We did a swim this evening, so that's
I
good.
definitely feel better after the swim. I didn't want to go there, but I knew that doing it will be better.
Yeah.
And I was extremely just kind of tired.
But it always feels good when it's over.
But then, I even start feeling good, like just moving in the water. And
Yep.
it was just this optional workout free swim, and it felt good.
Yeah. So feeling pretty good. Should be able to bounce back from this one. Going into this race, I would say that my main focus this year is on my two extreme tries. I have Canada Man in July, in early July, and then I have the Icon in Italy in the beginning of September. So that's been my main focus this year. And really, in order to prepare for these, I've really been treating it more like an Ironman. So I've been really focused on staying healthy, being strong, getting as strong as I can get, and then building endurance and speed as just part of the training process. And when I train for an Ironman, I still include a lot of intensity in my training. And when I train for a half, I still include a good amount of volume in my training. So this has allowed me to jump into a variety of races, which Blue Ridge was one of my focuses this year, and my only 70.3 that I have planned this year. And having done the race twice before, I'm very familiar with the course. And I love the venue. I love the course. And I knew that I had to do it again this year. So going into this race, I was healthy, which is always important because you can't race at your best if you're dealing with an injury or health issue. So that's always my goal, is to prioritize health over performance. And then when I'm healthy, I can perform well. I was pretty nervous going into this race, but good nerves. I care and I wanted to perform at my best, and also knowing that I have been really consistent with my training and have been healthy and have done the preparation that I've given for myself to continue to develop and evolve, especially now that I'm 41. I have to continue to think outside the box, so that I can continue to improve, which means doing things that I know work, but also doing new things to provide new stressors and new stimuluses to my body. So, having said all that, I was nervous for this, not for the course itself, but just knowing that I was going to ask my body to give its best. And I knew it was ready. And I was nervous about what that was all going to look and feel like on the day. Were you nervous at all for the relay?
No, I wasn't nervous at all, and it was just kind of like that. Like somebody asked me, like, "What do you feel?" And like the answer was pretty much like nothing. It was just
It's very different
Yeah.
doing a relay. And
Yeah.
it's not that you don't care, because
No, I did.
once you
Yeah.
show up, you're going to give your absolute best. And
Oh.
we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
You did really dig deep, but it really just shows also, like, there are certain things in a triathlon that make you feel more nervous.
Mhm.
And running off the bike, I think for some people it's like, oh, once my feet hit the ground, I feel comfortable. For myself, it's kind of like the run makes me the most nervous. For other people, it could be the swim. But for you, with the bike being your happy place and you're so comfortable biking, that it didn't bring those nerves, because you knew once the gun goes off, you knew exactly what you were going to be able to do. Yeah. Going into the race, we arrived on Thursday. It's about a 5-hour drive. So we left late morning so we could get in a morning workout. We got in a good swim. And then we hit the road and arrived a little bit before dinner time. Ordered Chipotle so I could pick it up after we did the groceries and relax the rest of the evening. Now, training on the course is very important to us. And I think a lot of athletes overlook the importance of training on the course. Now, sometimes it's not safe to do so, and you have to think about the logistics of your race venue so that you can still do workouts. I find that a lot of athletes, they arrive to a race and they begin to get very stale, arriving 2-3 days out from the race and doing very little instead of getting the body primed and ready to go for the race. Because if you think about it, our bodies as athletes are used to doing training day after day after day, and an hour to 2+ hours every day. And so when you automatically say, oh, it's race week, I'm going to remove all that, the body's kind of like, well, okay, what's going
You're
on?
basically adding more stress than not, and like in your head, you're thinking like, oh, I need to be rested, but you're actually stressing the body in this way, and then it's hard for your body to ask to show up on the race day.
Right. So the pre-race workouts are really important, and they should not be overlooked on race week. And on Friday, I really wanted to swim, but logistically, I just didn't want to make the 45-minute drive to the lake, which I did in the years past. I felt like that brought more stress, and I was more tired from that. I wanted to go to the Y to swim, but I also wanted to sleep in a little bit on Friday, which meant waking up at I ended up waking up at 6:30 or 7, but I didn't want to be rushed in the morning. I wanted to just try to just take my time in the morning, and I didn't want to push back other workouts that I wanted to do on the day and then feel like I was training all day, especially in the heat. So I just prioritized biking on the course. So I did the 13-mile run course. I drove to a parking lot and biked the run course, and then I did a run afterwards. And my run included a little bit of effort and then just easy running. And I chose, thanks to the Corral's suggestion, I chose to run the back half of the run course as kind of my tempo, and then easy jogging just kind of back as if I was finishing. And this was really important to me to do these workouts on the course because, number one, biking the run course, I was able to really become familiar with the run course. And knowing that running is not a strength of mine, that mentally, and this course doesn't suit my style of running because it's undulating, but it's still fairly flat. It doesn't have any steep hills and those rhythm changes that I really enjoy, although the back half has a little bit more. So that's kind of where I found my rhythm a little bit more. But I wanted to mentally put myself in the race. So as I'm riding my bike, I'm taking note of certain landmarks, like, oh, once I pass this gas station or I pass this bridge, I know what's coming next. And that allows me to put myself in the race so that if I'm tired or if my mind's wandering or if I'm having a low moment, I know what to look forward to. And so I was thinking about that as I was biking, to take note of certain things that could help me at certain times during the race. And then same thing when I was running, Corral suggested that I run the back half of the course. Number one, he knows that that's an area that suits me a lot better. So he knew I would be happier there than just on a flat part of the path. But also, it allowed me to visualize a section where, when I'm the most tired, where can I pick up speed? Where do I need to push a little bit harder? Or maybe if I'm struggling, what's coming next? So that was really helpful. As far as Saturday, the day before the race, again, I wanted to swim, but I also really wanted to get a good night of sleep and just take my time in the morning and not be rushed. So we opted to drive about 8 or 9 miles.
It was like 4.
Oh, 4? Mm-hmm. That's it? Okay. So drive, 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes to a section on Lee Highway, which is the section we go on after we leave the lake, which is a straight 20+ miles, straight stretch of road, a 4-lane highway road for most of it. And Corral suggested that we go out there. He was going to just ride behind me, and just to warm up, we had headwind going out. So it was just 30+ minutes until I felt good. I still felt like I was not feeling so good at 30 minutes. So I just wanted to keep riding. until about 40 minutes. I found a good place. We turned around, and then we did a main set, about 20 minutes worth. What was the main set?
So the main set was 4 times 3 minutes build to and over the race pace. So basically build to strong with 2 minutes easy spin following each. So 4 times 5 minutes, it's 20 minutes. So there was a good solid work to activate the body, remind the body that, hey, you need to perform tomorrow. So it's not just about easy spinning and not really doing any work. So that was really good activation, because then it's easier to access this type of feeling on the race day when you do these pre-race workouts.
Yeah, so that was really helpful. I also opted not to run on Saturday because I ran a little more than 5 miles. I also ran earlier in the week, and I have found that it's really more for me about biking the day before the race that gets me fired up and gets my body feeling good. Anything extra is just kind of testing out gear, or just making sure all the ducks are in the row.
Yeah, each athlete are individual.
Yeah.
Right? They have specific needs, and sometimes it takes time to kind of learn what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
But with our experience and ourselves, I much rather do like a more intensive main workout the day before the race than just kind of spinning easy and like saving everything for the next day, because then it's kind of like you bring in your body into the more normal state that it is used to, and it's easier to perform.
Yeah. So speaking of not going into the race too flat, what was your workout like on Friday?
Well, the purpose of this trip for me was to put a good solid training block in, because I have some other races coming up. So my
2 gravel races.
Yeah, 2 big gravel races.
Yeah.
One of them, it's 1-day race, 130 plus miles, and then the second one, it's 5-day stage race on the gravel, and it has, I don't know how many miles.
A lot.
So anyway, on what was it, Friday, my plan was to go to the area where the lake is, where you guys swim in the 70.3, and there's a lot of mountain bike trails and gravel roads. So I was going to bike there. I mapped it out and was happy with that. And as I'm biking there, I got stopped by a police officer, and he informed me that the whole area is closed to public. So I had to find an alternate road. So first I was like, okay, I'll just bike on the course, on the road, and I may just veer off somewhere. So I went and I did that the first 20 plus miles on that on the Lee Highway. I turned to start a claw, and as I started,
and just for reference, you were on your gravel bike.
Yeah, I was on
full setup.
Full setup, no cheating with skinny tires and stuff like that. No, full setup, like I would be riding on whatever it's required, gravel type or off-road. So fat tires and all that. So as I start climbing the claw, soon after I saw a sign for a trailhead. So I took that turn, and
which is very typical for Corral.
Mm-hmm.
He is one who loves adventure, and he's one to, I wonder where that road goes.
Yeah.
I know that there's some athletes that are like, that is not me, but that is definitely Corral.
Yeah. So I went there, and then I found some trails, and it was more like a hiking trail and pretty technical hiking trail, and a lot of rocks and stuff. So a few times I would need to get off the bike and push the bike, but I biked most of it, and I know that it would be still very hard for most people on the mountain bikes, full suspension mountain bikes, but I was totally fine on the gravel bike, and I had so much fun. And but I worked hard. Like my heart rate was getting up there when I was climbing those steep,
a lot of torque,
really narrow trails with a lot of roots and rocks and getting over. So yeah, you checked up the heart rate really good when you do that. So it was, and then I found some more like a fire road. So I used those, and then I ended up underneath the parkway. It was like a tunnel. I was like, there's a parkway. So for a split second, I was like, maybe I can just go up there and just finish it back on the bike course for the race. But then that fire road that I was on, the forest road, looks so amazing. So I was like, nah, I'll just stay on here. And I had no idea where I'm going. I was just going, and it's like I kind of have a general idea of the direction where Roanoke is somewhere like that direction. I'm heading a little bit farther out, but it's still kind of that direction. And I know there's that main highway, so I should hit it at some point. So, and that's what I did. I hit that highway at some point and turn on it and riding. And after, some miles, I saw that turn from the parkway where the race goes, and I knew that, okay, I'm heading the right direction. I'm heading back to Roanoke, and that's what I did Friday.
So it was about 4 hours or so?
Well, it was 4 hours riding time. It was almost 5 hours total time, because there was some pushes
detours.
and stopping and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then, so that's what you did on Friday. And then Saturday,
Saturday I rode with you or behind you, and I knew that was going to be a challenge, because the gravel bike, it's fine and it feels really fast when you're riding with other people on the same bikes and off-road. But when you get with somebody who's got skinnies and aero bars and it's in the full race mode and tapered, it's pretty difficult. So I really had a hard time to just stay on your wheel, and you dropped me a few times, and I was fine with it. Yeah, but it was really, really hard workout. So it was we did like 75 minutes, but it was pretty much, for me, it was like doing, hard interval workout for that. And then we came back and put my running shoes on, and I did about an hour-ish, 8 miles-ish run workout. So ran from our place to the run course, and then back. On the way back, I found a few different roads to use, just because I don't like to repeat the same stuff. So it wasn't just out and back; it was some twist to it. And then there was a race day.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good point, that when you do races, they can be used for many different purposes. And it would be a shame to just see a race day as, this is a race and I have to PR. I have to be at my absolute best. I have to be totally tapered and rested. That every race deserves its own attention separately, but you can use races for different reasons. And I think joining a relay can be a great opportunity to just bike hard and to get in or swim hard or run hard, to just get a solid supported training session in. Also, using a race as part of a training block, whether it's a sprint or an Olympic or half. So there are many different ways to use races. And I think thinking about it differently allows you to be in the race environment more often. And what we know is that you can never simulate the emotions and motions of race day in training like you can on the actual race. So the more you're in that race environment, the more confident you are, and you can also practice things. And so in Carell's situation, not only could he practice nutrition and wearing his hydration pack and his bike setup and everything, but also doing it tired and still having to show up. So there was a lot of purpose for him, and he still took the relay very seriously as well.
Yeah, and like you said, it was a great opportunity to do a hard workout, knowing that the occasion of the race will always bring the best out of me, and I'll be surrounded by other athletes who are also racing, so I will be able to push myself much harder than I would do if I ride by myself, even if I try.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that this was going to be really good training load to finish with this hard, 56 miles of hard riding.
Yeah.
And did just that.
Yeah. Now, another tip or another thing I want to mention is being organized and prepared. And this isn't just the obvious with your race day gear and your bike is in good working condition, but it's also things like nutrition and just making sure you have everything that you need at that race. It can be a lot more difficult if you're flying to a race because you might be limited to what you can bring with you. But being organized is really important. And I find that a lot of athletes least as my perspective as a coach, I find that a lot of athletes show up to race day very unorganized, and they become very frantic and stressed, and they're spending so much time trying to find things and get things, and they overlook certain things, or they're putting too much focus on things that don't really matter. And so whether it's writing an itinerary or just knowing what works, it can help you stay on track. And it's very important to arrive at your best on race day, which means being properly fueled and hydrated, which means being well rested in terms of good sleep, staying off your feet and not being out in the sun. It means, doing what you need to do to put yourself in a good mindset or put yourself in the zone. So the more organized you are, the better. And I will say that I created a video on Friday talking about how I was fueling going into this race, and doing that video and actually working through some of those calculations of how much carbs I was going to be eating, it really helped me out. And in terms of making sure I was eating enough, it held me accountable to knowing that, hey, I'm not going to be hungry all day. I'm not going to want to eat, but I need to make myself eat so I can be well fueled. I can't just listen to my body or my cravings or what I'm wanting. I need to have a thought out plan that's going to allow me to arrive to the race well fueled. And so being able to walk through all of that helped me out. Also, we've done a lot of races this year, and several triathlons off-road this year. And each one of those races just allows us to know what works, what doesn't work, and helps with that routine and to become more familiar. And familiarity brings confidence. So now on to the race. So woke up pretty early on race day morning. This race has a really early start of 6:30, and then you also need to be on a shuttle bus, and the last shuttle bus is at 5. The race starts at 6:30. So I chose to have Carell drop me off, and so he was not in any type of rush to get out to the lake. So he just dropped me off, parked the car. So we went on separate buses. I arrived to the lake probably a little after 5, which was plenty of time to get to the race, to get to the transition area.
And then you found me in the transition.
And then you beat me there, which I have no idea how that happened, but that doesn't surprise me that you beat me there.
I just went, parked the car and went to the first bus I saw, and the bus took me
I
there.
have no idea, because you were like 10 minutes behind me and you beat me there. I see you in there pumping your tires, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So we got the bike ready. Everything was fine. Always test the gears, make sure my electronic shifting works, make sure the tires are good, make sure the brakes work, put my nutrition on the bike, and then had some time to kill, and did a few porta potty stops just to make sure that my system was empty and I was good to go. You and I, we don't really feel like we have to stay together before the race, but we usually just do our own thing. We kept running into each other, which was kind of funny throughout the morning, but I just did my own thing, did a little bit of jogging, put on my wetsuit, and then I opted to start towards the very front. So even though I know that I'm not a sub 27 swimmer, I don't think that there are really a lot of sub 27 minute swimmers.
None.
So I just got towards the front, kind of knew that there was a few other good swimmer girls out there. So I wanted to be around them. So my strategy, so this race started at 6:30. We jump off a dock. I think I was maybe the 4th or 5th female in the water, just from what I could see. And my strategy is just swim hard, take out speed. Because there was no warm up, as I mentioned in the Xterra race, I felt so good with my takeout speed because I could warm up in the water. I definitely feel like that hurts me when I can't warm up in the water. So it does take me some time to really get into that race effort. So I feel like I went out hard, I settled, and I brought it back really hard.
It's almost like, the takeout speed is important when you're starting in the field.
Yes.
Like the Xterra was a field, and
right.
You need to make the separation.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't take people with you on your feet, and
yes.
you can just, make the gap. And
I definitely did not swim that same intensity.
Here,
I wasn't trying to get away.
People at the time, so you're not really getting away.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying it, because I definitely was not doing that same effort. I didn't feel like I needed to get away from people.
And it's impossible to do it when you don't have to warm up.
Yeah. So I just felt like I needed to get get the heart rate up a little bit and then settle in. The water felt great. It was 72 degrees. Definitely felt a little bit warm just from my effort. I like to sight 2 buoys ahead just to help keep me on course, so I don't look at that next buoy, but the following buoy. And on the way out, I was just focusing on staying on course. And then once I made the first turn and then the second turn going back, just to kind of help keep my mind occupied, because I felt like I was getting stronger, I was just counting my strokes, 1 buoy to the next buoy, and just counting the numbers down, how many buoys left, because they were numbered. So just counting like 1 till I got to that next buoy, and that really helped me just keep that good solid rhythm. So I felt like the swim went really well. I wasn't sure, I passed a few girls, but I wasn't sure how many were ahead of me. When I got out of the water, I felt pretty good. I didn't wear a watch for this, just because I know if I see a time that I don't like, it will be in my head. So just continued on. I do wear a watch in the off-road races just because those times don't really mean a lot to me. So it doesn't really matter what I see, but I've done so many 70.3s. I know what I want to see. And so I just, swam and then got to the transition area. I feel like my transitions have really improved thanks to off-road racing and just, doing more races. So I felt like I had a good transition. We do have to put everything back into our bag, our wetsuit, swim cap, and goggles. So that went back into my bag to be shuttled back to the race finish line area. In my Castelli race suit, the pockets are really deep. So I had a gel and some Power Bar chews already in my pocket that I had there, that just put the wetsuit on over it. So that way I didn't have to spend time putting anything in my pockets. I saw you there and you gave me some information that I was like 45 seconds behind another girl. I knew the Yoder athletes were very strong athletes. So I kind of had my eye on them, as well as my good friend, Megan Philnow. So, and when I say this, it's just, these other girls are going to help bring the best out of me. So I'm racing for myself, and I love race day just because I know it always brings out the best in me. And that's why I train, is to just see what I can do on race day. So it was a long run to the mountain line. I think it was like a quarter mile from the swim finish all the way to the mountain line. And once I got on the bike, it just felt good. I will say that I've only ridden my tri bike about 4 times outside since Lake Placid last year. But the reason for that is that we have found that when I do long rides outside, because I still have a tri bike on the trainer that I ride, a different tri bike that I ride on the trainer at least once a week, very high intensity efforts or steady state efforts, but those workouts are usually no more than an hour and a half. A lot of them around an hour and a half. But what we have found is that the tri bike, it tightens me up in my shoulders, so that my swimming isn't so good. It also really affects my hips, and then that affects my running. So we have learned that the tri bike, these long rides outside for me, haven't been as valuable, and I can still get a lot of good fitness from riding other bikes. I would love to ride my tri bike more outside, but we have found that for my health and longevity as a triathlete, that if I can limit my time riding on the tri bike outside, the better it is for me.
And you do a lot of riding on other bikes, like a lot. So
yeah.
Before you move on to your bike, let me just chime in, since we talked about a transition in your swim start. How was my experience during that time?
Yeah, let's hear about the observations that you had.
So that was a very unique and a new experience for me, and I really enjoyed it. It was good to just kind of see things from different perspective, because my typical pre-race morning and being in the transition, it's just kind of like I try to really separate myself from everything else that it's going on there. So I'm just kind of like in my own bubble. I don't like any kind of distraction of any kind. So usually I just help you with your bike, and then just like I'm doing my own thing, and I don't really care what's going around me and who's there, and I don't talk to anybody. It's just me getting myself ready for the effort of the race. But this time I didn't need to do that, so I was a little bit more observant, and so there are a few things that kind of like were interesting. So first was, like, as they were calling athletes to to line up for the swim, and that's usually the time that I'm getting there because the race is about to start. I noticed that like there's maybe 80% of athletes who just don't care about this situation that the race is about to start.
Were you stressed for them, or
I was almost like getting stressed. Like, people just go there because the race is about to start. Well, if that's you think that it's stressful. Imagine that you guys were coming back, swimming back. You have a few more minutes left, and there are still people casually putting on the wetsuit in the transition area, thinking about maybe getting to the start and start their day. So I was like, whoa, you should go. So that's one thing that was very unique and different. Also, since I was there with that, the relay teams have two rows of rocks, and so I was just kind of like listening and observing, and you can tell that there are some that they doing the relay because they are maybe novice athletes, and somebody, and they probably can't do the whole thing. So somebody can bike, somebody can run, somebody can swim,
which is great. I love that
Awesome.
idea.
Yeah, and it was like you can see that the excitement, the camaraderie, they all before the race, like the swimmer and the biker were there and just like talking how how they feel and all that. And then there are these serious people who want to smash that race, and they are just so on it, which is also good. It's like it's also
something for
awesome to
everyone.
see that. Hey, let's just smash it. Let's just all out and see what happens. And then it's kind of like in between, and it's kind of where I feel like it's my place there. But it was interesting to listening to stories and and all that, and you see the different type of the bikes, how somebody's like so decked up and everything, like all for the speed, and some people just kind of, yeah, that's my bike, that's what I ride, and that's what I'll be riding today. So it was like all kinds of different type of things. But I have like I never feel that the time of swimming it's so long until you are just there, like not doing anything.
Yeah.
So like when you start the race and you do half Ironman, and sure, it's long, it's a half an hour plus, but by swimming it just goes by very
So
quickly,
fast, yeah.
right? And here it was like, oh my gosh, you still didn't reach the first buoy. What I'm gonna do there, and then seeing how slow it's going, and not knowing where my swimmer starts, and there was some delay. So I'm just kind of like, what I'm going to do. So I just walked through the transition and just checking people's bikes because I had nothing else to do.
Doesn't surprise me.
Like if this would be a bike race, I would be warming up before the race.
Yeah.
Right? I would be on the bike and warming up, or I have a trainer there, but I didn't think the trainer will fit into the morning bag, so I didn't bring it.
No.
So I'm just walking and looking at the bikes, which is also really new and interesting experience. You kind of see the bikes there when you're on the race day, but this time I could really take a look, and so that was cool too. And then I could see how you start guys coming out of the water, and see if everybody's in the race mode and how they go. So it was also really cool and new experience. And I was cheering and clapping, and it was awesome. I saw every single Tri-Marnie getting out of the water. So I knew that they are all ahead, and maybe I will see some again and can cheer again. So it was just perfect experience. I really, really enjoyed it. And honestly, it was great.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it so much that you were right there when your swimmer came out of the water and you were ready for your handoff?
I was there. I was ready. I was looking, and then it's like, the porta potties were right there. I was like, I can probably squeeze one more leak out of me. And I went there. It took me a few seconds, went out, and my swimmer was there looking for me.
You delayed.
Yeah.
So now onto the bike. So I felt really good on the bike. I just felt like my legs showed up. I felt like I was well fueled. The swim didn't take anything out of me. The first 2 miles are really technical, so I enjoyed that. I was able to pass the lead girl within those first 2 to 3 miles. Maybe it was about 4 miles. And then I was just out there, long stretch of road, just a small handful of guys ahead of me. I found myself with one guy, and I'm sure other athletes have been in the situation where you just feel like you're playing cat and mouse with the same athlete for several miles. And so I would pass him on the uphills, and then he would pass me on the downhills, and he would stay ahead for the downhills. I felt like we were similar riding ability, so I wasn't really able to get away from him. I also didn't really appreciate his riding style because he had this really high cadence, and it was just really hard to judge when he was like how he was riding the terrain, if that makes sense. Whereas like, whereas normally it's like, oh, they're picking it up, their cadence is kind of accelerating, or they're pushing more. You can tell what they're about to do, but he had the same high cadence, which was just kind of driving me crazy because I couldn't anticipate what he was about to do at any time. But that was fine. So then somewhere around between miles 10 and 15. And I was just thinking to myself, like, I'm so slippy through the air. I love this position on the bike. I'm so happy on my tri bike. I'm having so much fun. I'm leading the race. And the official, first I heard a motorcycle come up to me, come up behind me and then go away. And then I didn't hear it again for several miles. And then all of a sudden a motorcycle comes up to me on one of the hills, and she shows me a blue card, which I have never had a penalty in my 17 years of long distance triathlon racing. And I was really taken away by this because I know the rules, I follow the rules, and I have nothing to gain by cheating. This is a hobby and something I do for fun, and I want a fair race. And to be honest, I'm very used to motorcycles, the referees being around me because of my swim bike combination that in long distance racing, I tend to be towards the front of the race, and I'm used to this. So the obvious would be, well, why would I cheat when I'm used to being near the front of the race? So she shows me this blue card, and I just didn't understand because I was intentionally soft pedaling. If I got even close to those 6 bike lengths, I would make sure I squeezed the brakes. I was soft pedaling, whatever I could do to make sure. But she told me that I got into the draft zone, which is within 3 bike lengths of the athlete. And if you are within 3 bike lengths, you have to make a pass and do that within 15 seconds. I didn't feel that the penalty was valid. I couldn't talk myself out of it. I know that kind of seems a little bit weird to say, but without her having evidence, I just felt like I needed to, or she was way behind me, so I didn't understand how she could have this evidence that I was in this draft zone.
There's no evidence.
And so, of course, I'm going to try to talk myself out of it because I was not intentionally cheating or trying to break any rules. So after talking to her, and she was a younger lady, but after talking to her for what seemed like forever, but I'm sure it was just a minute or two, the last thing I said to her was, how long is the penalty? And because I didn't know in half Ironman, I knew in long distance it's 5 minutes, but she said 5 minutes. And I was just like, oh, great. That kind of really affects the day. And the other thing that she said to me, which really bothered me, was, well, you're at the front of the race, so we have to watch you and you'll have an advantage, or something like that. I can't really put those pieces together. So here I am at mile 15 of the race, 10 to 15 miles, and I have these words in my head. I have this feeling in my head. I have this unfortunate situation in my head, and it really stayed with me. It's really hard if you receive bad news or something happens that's not your fault. You can't just shake it off. If you got news that a family member was sick in mile 10 of your race, you're not just going to be like, oh, this is so much fun, and, I'll deal with it later. So that's all I could relate it to. And then I started thinking about other athletes like Sebastian Kienle and Laura Philipp and Sam Long and other professionals that do this for a living, just how unfair it is. And then I had to deal with the situation, which it sounds so bizarre, but, I don't want to finish this race. I feel so embarrassed. I don't want to stop at the penalty tent. Do I not stop at the penalty tent and just finish it and then just get a DQ? Like all these really irrational thoughts, because it's like, how do I deal with something that I've never dealt? Where is this penalty tent? Is it going to be in the middle of the race? Is it going to be at the end of the race? So now I'm looking for it wherever it is. the only reason why I know what to do in the penalty tent is just from watching a lot of triathlons and knowing the procedures and kind of the rules and things you can and can't do when you're in the tent. So
just if I could interrupt you quickly, what you said was interesting. So the referee said that you are at the pointy end of the race, so we need to watch you, which kind of also means that the other girls who are in the middle of the pack and have a lot more options to get a free ride, they are not being watched.
No. She was the only referee I saw for the whole race, and then she was gone. So I never
didn't see any referees.
Yeah, I never saw another referee for the rest of the race.
And I was going through the field, I didn't see any referees.
Yeah, so I don't want to dwell on it too much, but it definitely still stings, and I feel just.
I think the key message here is that it's when it happens, you just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can argue about. There's no, try to fight it or being angry. You just have to brush it off and do the best you can to stay, true to yourself and, to our team, that, we don't make excuses. We don't make scenes. We don't, cuss out loud. It's just, it's such a bummer. It's unfortunate situation, but you must stay composed.
Yeah. And I didn't yell at her. I just asked her and just really was concerned about this penalty. But then once that happened, my one thought was, okay, ride as hard as you can and try to get so you can not waste those 5 minutes in the penalty tent. But then at the same time, it's like, well, but I still have to run off the bike, if I choose to continue, and I don't want to just, destroy myself. So I will say, though, what I learned is, number one is, when something happens to you and you keep thinking about it, you're not focused on the race. And I really do feel like I didn't ride at my best, which means I didn't push as hard as I probably could, because I couldn't get the best out of myself because I had something else on my mind. So it's just a lesson that if you're dwelling on something, or if something doesn't go as planned and you can't get that out of your mind, then you're not present. And I could definitely tell that I wasn't present, because throughout the rest of the bike, I wasn't having fun. And it also reminded me that racing is fun. And, I wasn't enjoying all those highs from the race that I should have been, and supporting the other athletes and enjoying the scenery, which wasn't there because of the fog, and thanking the volunteers. I was just so concerned about this situation that was out of my control. So I would say that I rode steady. I rode safe. I still rode with tactics on the course and take advantage of certain areas. But it definitely didn't bring out the absolute best in me, which I want on race day. But I will say, though, that this race was, it was interesting in that the entire parkway was in the clouds, and it was the most bizarre thing ever.
Like fog, no visibility.
I remember getting up to one of the aid stations, and you could hear water, water, water. And there was nobody there. You hear all these noises and there's nobody. And then all of a sudden, this aid station appears. So 10 to 20 meters ahead of you, that's all you could see. So I was really just riding, focusing on that yellow line. The hardest part was not knowing really what's a false flat, what's a climb, just because you couldn't see what the road is. You really were just like feeling the terrain changing, but you didn't know, am I going downhill? Am I being pushed by the wind? What's going on? So it was definitely a different experience. And then I got a little bit cold, and that started to worry me when I started descending. If I'm in a penalty tent, am I going to be really cold? Am I going to shiver? So I started thinking about that as I'm descending, but then it all worked out. And I would say that I did the best that I could in this situation. When I got to the penalty tent, I just went in there. I didn't say anything to anyone, although they were asking me questions. How's your day? Have you done this race before? And I'm just like,
have you been in the jail before?
So, but I didn't know where the penalty tent was. I thought maybe it was in the transition area because I've gone all this way. It was right before the dismount line. So I had already taken my feet out of my shoes. So shoes were still clipped in. So I just used that time to stretch, had a few sips of water. And I actually thought I was going to go by really slow, especially as I started to see a few girls start to pass me. But the time did go by relatively fast. So I felt like I used the time well and just, not expending a lot of energy, but thinking, okay, what am I going to do in the transition area and things like that. So how's your race bike?
I biked hard.
Yeah.
And before the race, I didn't know how long the course would take me, because it was new experience for me to be to this road event on my gravel bike. The tires are much slower, and just kind of judging based on the speed that I kind of could see before the race when I would be riding the paved roads. I was thinking that definitely over 3 hours, maybe 3 hour 10 minutes will be kind of like the time, but I really didn't know. But I just rode hard as I could, and knowing that it's such a good workout, and there were a lot of dynamics. So like the stretch to the 20+ mile stretch to start the main climb, it was just lightly undulating, right? So I was passing a lot of athletes, but then there were several guys on the tri bikes where I would pass them on any of the up hills, or slightly rising up, and then they just carry a better speed on the more of the false flat going down. So they would repass me. It was specifically one guy that I was probably going back and forth like 8 or 10 times. He was on this Pinarello Light, like pretty teched up bike, but it didn't bother me, and I don't think it bothered him either. It just kind of was that the dynamics of how we were riding, and anytime the road would go up, he was saving his legs. So I just continued with my own pace and pass him, and then he would go by going downhill. I was just biding my time to start a climb, and then when the climb started, I really, really went hard. And it's just so interesting to kind of see how things are different. Like in my mind, I was going like extremely hard, and I was like, it's gotta be faster than what I did the previous year when I was in the race on the tri bike, because I was not going this hard. I was racing hard, but definitely not this hard, And then when after the race, I looked, and I rode slower than the previous year, obviously, because I was on the slower bike. But like in my mind, I was like, I'm going really hard, and especially like getting the feedback of how I was constantly passing people. But that's the like how I went. But the best part of the whole thing was that I could see a lot of our athletes, and that was kind of like really cool. And I could see how they ride, and I tried to cheer them up and give them some encouragement. And so that was really, really fun. And the most fun I had with Zach, because he was the last one towards the end, and we'll be going back and forth a little bit, because again he was on the tri bike, and I was getting some of those downhills and the speedy segments. We go by, and then I would go by him again, and so it was pretty cool. And
what was your favorite part of the bike?
The whole favorite part of the bike was the end, like
through the town,
going
over the
zigzags,
railroad tracks, around the roundabout.
The volunteers were yelling, and like they used to just kind of like slow down, for everybody. And then I'm going, it's like slow down. Oh, he's really going for it. Slow down. And I just jumped those rocks and went on. And
you literally jumped them?
Yeah. The one set, it was like jumpable, like to kind of like lift off. But it was really, really fun, and I left everything out there, and I ended up biking 2 hours and 47 minutes, which was way beyond any of my expectations. Like, and I have no kind of like feedback, but it just shows that the race day can bring something special out of you, and it totally worked the purpose that what I wanted. That it was a really solid training day.
Yeah. So when I started the run, I felt pretty good when I started the run, and actually I felt with the cooler weather, which makes a huge difference, not just nutrition and being able to take in more, but yet not needing more nutrition or hydration, but just your body isn't under as much stress. So you could really push the pace. And we saw that, especially with the girls were just running so fast. And I actually, in some ways, kind of enjoyed not being in the front, even though I was technically on paper second or third in the race after the bike. I never got passed by a female, so I would have been first female on the course, even though that because of how we started, there were girls per the timing that were ahead of me. So I actually enjoyed chasing because that's a new position for me in a race. And so I just tried to use that as my motto for the race, is just chase now. And at this point, there's an absolute, I was so relieved to get that penalty out of the way and to still feel like I'm in the race. Wasn't focused on my age group. I just wanted to compete with these other amazing girls out there and just see where I stack up on one of my most favorite courses. And so as I'm running, I just felt really good. And it's always interesting to me that I can always in a half Ironman run faster than I do in training. I never see the paces consistently on race day in training. And so it's always great when I can just kind of surprise myself on race day. I think you're kind of the same, that, you know, race day always brings the best out of us. And I kept thinking about, hey, you know, this situation really sucks that you're in, but you can still put together a really good run and do something that you haven't done in a really long time. I've been wanting to break an hour 40 in a half Ironman. I ran 1:36 once in a half when I won Branson 70.3, and that was back in 2012. And I've been wanting to break an hour 40 since then. And so I felt like maybe today is the day. And then I thought about you, Corel, when you're shifting stopped working when you were in Kona and you had to ride the whole 112 miles on one gear in Kona at the World Championship. And then I kept telling you, you know, even though you felt like your day was done, I said, you can still put together a really good run. And then when I saw you on the course, I was actually happy to see your runner on the course because that told me, yes, he's going to be out on the course. And I actually didn't mention the penalty to anybody except for our friend Thomas, that when he passed me, it just felt really good just to tell somebody. And I knew Thomas is very, positive thinking. So I knew he was going to tell me something. And he's like, Marnie, you can't give up, don't dwell on it, something along those lines. And it actually felt really good to tell him that. I told him in a very bummed way, like, I caught a penalty, and he said the right thing, and that really helped. But when I saw you out on the course, I didn't tell you anything.
No. And I didn't know at that point. I was just kind of surprised that why did you have that such a slow last segment? I was like, maybe it was something wrong with the Ironman trucking, and I was just kind of surprised, like, oh, a bike faster than you. It doesn't make sense, but I don't know what happened.
Yeah. And I didn't want to waste any energy on that. And I think that's really important because we have heard athletes before and they're racing and they're just shouting out the reasons why they're not having a good race. And I feel like if you're still dwelling on that, again, you're just wasting energy on something that you can't control. So at this point, I didn't want to explain anything to Corel. I just wanted him to see me having a good run. And he told me, you can put together a really good run. You're in second place in your age group behind Megan, but you're running really well. And I was running really well. And I was so happy to be able to run so well and to feel so strong. And even looking at my pictures, my form looked good. And I'm just so happy with the run I was able to put together to finish off the day. And then eventually you did hear from Thomas about the penalty, which was when I was at probably mile 11 or so on the way back. But you didn't say anything, and you're just, as if nothing happened.
Yep.
And that's how I was doing the run. I really enjoyed the back half of the run, and it really helped knowing the course because mentally I could see myself in certain scenarios. So I put together the best run possible. I got passed by a few girls. I passed maybe one girl. Running isn't my strength, but I felt like today it was my strongest, and I was really happy to put together a really good run. So that was my race, the ups and the downs, but Corel was reminding me as we were talking after the race that I did accomplish everything that I wanted to accomplish on this day. I didn't anticipate a penalty, but I swam low 28s. I was hoping to break 28 minutes, but none of the girls did. So that just tells me that on this day, I swam the best that I could. I biked an okay bike, a strong bike, minus the 5 minutes, probably put me at about 2:44. Knowing that I didn't really leave bike at my best, but still put together a good bike. And then I ran a 138, which was sub 140, which was something that I really wanted to do on this course. So all in all, it was a good day.
Yeah.
Anything else you would mention about the day and watching the athletes out on the course?
No, I mean, it was, it was the right epic experience, with the weather, with the fog, not seeing the road, and, everybody just conquering it. One of the hardest courses out there. It was just awesome to be there.
And the Blue Ridge race will not be happening next year because they are doing some reconstruction on the parkway. But the word on the street is that they are bringing it back for in a year. I cannot say more positive things about this race. They closed the parkway. There are no cars on the entire parkway for over 30 miles, which is great to have a closed course.
Especially
Actually,
when-
almost
when-
35 miles.
When the turn to its worst, I knew, okay, the road is closed. There are no upcoming cars. I was familiar with that course, so I can bump the distance still. And if there are other athletes, I can just move to the other line if needed. I didn't need to do that, just stay on the yellow line, but I knew that there's no danger coming from the other direction.
Yeah, but to have 35 miles closed, it's just a great thing.
It would just be a bummer if I would hit a bear or something.
There's police officers and volunteers at all intersections. The volunteers are amazing. The aid stations are amazing. The community really welcomes the event. So I can't say enough good things about this event. There is nothing negative about this event. The swim is absolutely beautiful. The only time in the year that anybody is allowed to swim in that lake. So I highly recommend this event. I hope to be back again. And we just love this venue. So I encourage you guys to check it out for a challenge.
Yeah, maybe in the future the race will start in the afternoon. It'll be even better.
That would be the perfect race for you, right?
No.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed our race recap. Maybe took away a few little nuggets of information. As always, if you have any questions with race strategies or nutrition or anything we can do to help, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks.
All right. Cheers.